Hey, Sean, different setup, but I'm back. It's been like 2 weeks since I've posted anything. And so I wanted to do a live Q&A, which no one asked for, which no one wants, which very few people asked any Qs for me to give any As to. But I wanted to do this anyway. And so the first question that I want to answer is my own question of why. Why am I doing this? And Q&As are a thing that people do who have either fans or they're at a certain stage in their career, and not just filmmaking, but any career, but you're at a certain stage where you have information that other people want. And because of that, people are eager to ask you questions and learn what it is that you know. But I'm definitely not at that station. And for me, a lot of these, anyone who's watching my YouTube channel, I think, especially anyone who's watching live, I probably know. I probably know you. If I don't know you, say hello. But most people, if they did have a question, they would ask a question in a non-YouTube way. But for people who don't know me, you probably still, there's a bunch of people on my channel who I've talked to who've reached out either in comments or shot me emails and stuff. And I would say my friend Fabian in France took one of my videos and asked me the other day if he could make a French version of it. And so he did, and it has like 2,000 views and it's awesome. And so like, that's someone I've never met, but we have communication. If there's any questions, people just communicate. And so why do this comes down to two things for me. And the first is it's just the obligation to create. And it's been a couple weeks and I had put this on the calendar, and it's so easy to not do things. It's so easy to say, nah, I'm not gonna do the live stream. There weren't a ton of questions that got asked, whatever reasoning you can come up with. It's very easy to not do things. And I've canceled several live streams over the past couple weeks just because, one, I was really busy. I'm doing a couple projects right now that I'm trying to finish up post-production on, and so most of my free time is spent editing those. But then the other element of it is just it's easy to not do something and to think that it's not going to be well received, and to make that the reason to not do it is it's simple. It's simple. And so with this week, I wanted to say, no, we're doing it. We're doing it anyway, even if it's poorly viewed with few questions. So the show must go on, I guess, is reason number one. But reason number two is sort of a long-term vision. And I think it'd be interesting to revisit this in a year or 5 years or 10 years and do it again and see some of the same questions and see how my answers have changed. So in some ways, this is just like, putting a bookmark in my life to say, how did these questions get answered by 36-year-old Sean today versus how they might be answered in the future by 37-year-old or 40-year-old or 50-year-old or 60-year-old Sean, and how the world's going to change and change me along with it. So for that reason, I'm doing it. So if you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I think, Justin, you're the only one here. I can't really tell, but it does look like no one is here at this point. But I took I'd put a Google form up with some questions, and I last checked it a couple hours ago, and there were a few, so I thought I would throw them on the screen and answer them as best as I can. They're like, I guess there's a good number of questions here. But if you have any other questions, throw them in the comments, and I'll just answer them live. I was texted by someone today who's going to be the only person here if anyone's here, saying there were lightning round questions that they would throw in the chat at some point. So if those pop up, we'll do them. But this won't be long. Here we go. Question number one, why the hat? I've made a video about why I wear hats, or I guess the video is called like how to wear big hats, somewhere on my channel from a few years ago. But it started just as an exercise of confidence, of saying I would look stupid if I wore that. And then to say like, well, why should I care? And so I started wearing it knowing that I thought I looked ridiculous. And then over time, I got comfortable with it. And now it's gone to the far side where I feel so comfortable in it that I don't feel comfortable showing up somewhere without it. And so I now have to, I guess, at some point go the other way and say, well, as an exercise in confidence, I'm going to take off my hat and go someplace, or take off my hat and make a video. And I've had a few videos where I don't wear hats, but that's how it started. It was just could I get away with that? And like 6 years later, yeah, I guess if this is getting away with it, I got away with it. This is, I think, a standard question. And when I saw this one, and I went in and I typed all these questions, or I copied and pasted them into so I could, put them on the screen. But when I made this, it just seemed like the quintessential Q&A question of what's the best advice you ever got. And in spite of having the time to think about this, I don't have a great answer. I think it's as simple as like, chill, relax, keep your composure. And I can't think of many situations in life that wouldn't be aided by having your absolute composure at that point. And so I think that's one that cascades down over everything else. And so at this point, I would say the best advice I ever got was be composed. I don't really know who I distilled that from, but I went through a period of time in my mid-20s where I was reading a lot of like management, not self-help books, but like self-improvement, or I don't know, optimization books, whatever you want to call it. And in there, I found that I could spend a lot of time doing things poorly if I didn't first spend a little bit of time getting my head right. And I think right now with the election cycle where it is, we're 1 week away from the election. There's a lot of conversation going on. There's a lot of misinformation coming from within and outside of our borders. And before you really jump on anybody for their decision or their opinion, find your composure, find some context for where things might be coming from and why someone might feel the way that they're feeling. But I think if you strap on a bit of composure before you approach a conversation like that, your thoughts on this would be a good purchase or not. Yeah, so I have a YouTube video where I demonstrate the neti pot. And it's just a gruesome video of me shoving this thing into my nose and dripping saline solution and snot all over the place and doing it uncut and uncensored. And for a long time, it was one of my only videos. As I started making more videos in like 2017, it was one of my only videos from like 2010 that had any views. And I think there's maybe like 1,000 views on it now or something. But because of that, when I would upload client videos to my channel, I like a rough draft, even as unlisted, like, hey, here's a link. This is before Frame.io existed and stuff. When I would send that stuff out, it would be like the next recommended video would be this neti pot video. And so I would always get emails and messages of like, yeah, we saw the video you made. It looked good. And then we saw the neti pot video. But it was fantastic. Get one. Use it. Try it yourself. They're not that expensive. I mean, you technically don't need to buy one. You need a pot that you can fit into your nose. A baggie would do in a pinch. Justin says, no one cared about me until I put on the hat. I put on the hat and still no one cared. How did you do the floating thumbnail for the video? I don't have a quick way to pull it up, but there's a photo of me. I think it is the channel like cover of my YouTube channel. If you go to my channel, where I'm like suspended in the air like mid-fall, and all I did was lay backward on a stool, take a photo of myself there, and then move me in the stool, take another photo, and then I just put the no stool photo behind the stool photo and erased the stool. And I think I painted in some shadows to make it convincing, but that was a quick, fun Instagram little troll thing. Who are your favorite YouTube creators? I'm subscribed to only a handful, and I've made several videos about how I've left social media and I'm not on Instagram or Facebook or anything anymore, but I'm still on YouTube. But I did take my YouTube subscriptions and I cut a lot of things down because I don't like using the recommended videos, because I find that I get sucked into watching sport highlight montages of really specific things, like a montage of third baseman throwing out a runner at first again and again. It'll just be like 50 of these plays back to back to back, like 5 seconds at a time. And you show me those and I will just keep watching them until it's 2 a.m. So I try not to watch the the recommended tab, but I go to my subscriptions and I try to curate that carefully. And so I unsubscribe from a lot of stuff. But the people I stay subscribed to, I think the most popular would be Casey Neistat. I'm just in awe of his storytelling and his ability to take nothing and turn it into something. However, lately, I'm either in awe or upset of / about how he's getting all this drone footage. And there's drone footage of him driving, and there's times where the drone is over roads, which you're not allowed to do, especially to park it over an intersection. And then if you're letting go of your controller and driving underneath it, you can't do that. It's not safe. It's not a good idea, and people are going to get hurt. And even if they don't get hurt from him doing it, even if he's very careful, it's setting an example for millions of viewers that like, oh, hey, I could get a drone and shoot this way. Casey shoots this way. I could shoot this way without taking the time to educate themselves on the rules. So I'm a little upset about that. Where if there is some secret where he is doing it safely and legally, I wish it weren't such a secret. But it's compelling footage, but gathered in an unsafe way. But I've been watching Gerald Undone's technical videos. I've been enjoying those, especially with the A7S III, which this is being streamed from into my computer. I really like Half as Interesting and Wendover Productions. It's the same person. Half as Interesting are funnier, like more obscure topics, and Wendover Productions, he takes some pretty interesting things and goes through them in a way that's meaningful and easy to understand. It's an educational channel, sort of like a Vsauce or something like that, but it's good. Lightning round, it's coming in. Here we go. Lightning round, take it or leave it format. Bacon foam, I'll take it. It's a lightning round. I don't know if I can say any more on these things, but I've had bacon foam once. It was good, so I'll take it. Skittles, definitely take it, even though I've had a bad experience with those, which you'd have to put in a queue for me to give the A. Bats, I'm not so into bats. We were driving on a vacation one time in Colorado when a bat hit the windshield and then came in the window. The windows were down, and my mom got hit in the head with it, and my dad had to pick up this dead bat, and he was making it apologize to my mom. And so maybe it's funny, maybe it's trauma, but I'll always remember that from that vacation. Vehicle operator 360s, I'm for them. Take them, absolutely. Even with my truck now, my little pickup truck, when I'm driving anywhere, every time I get gas, I do a full walk around the car, kick the tires, just make sure there's nothing hanging off. Make sure your car seems like it's one solid piece. Lavalier microphones, I'm opposed. Although I got called, especially now in COVID, I'm opposed to getting that close and wiring somebody up. But I got called out, and I made a video about microphones, and I said I don't like lavs because you can see them. And they were like, why would you be upset about that? You have a giant microphone covering part of your face. It's like, okay, that's a good point. In the context of my professional video production, when I'm interviewing someone, for example, I'm not going to put this thing in their face, but I also don't want to put a lav, and you see this black wire or something. I know there's ways to hide them, but you just get better sound out of an overhead microphone. So leave them, lavalier microphones. Guitar sets and airport terminals, I'm for them. And is there something on my YouTube channel these seem like they're all deep cuts into my YouTube channel. Flights to Neptune. There's a song somewhere on my YouTube channel that I wrote about Neptune, which I assume that's a reference to, but I would take it. I guess I could have put that on the screen this whole time and put Justin's face on there with it. Lighting round, complete. Rounding the turn now. Any other favorite YouTube creators? I've got a lot of creators where it's not necessarily that I love their content like I do the other people, but I've become friends with them. Like there's this guy who's redoing his channel named John in Germany, and I've just enjoyed talking with him. He's been on my podcast, and we've never met. We've only interfaced online. And so there's people like that where there's people that I enjoy, but as far as like channels and content that I'm constantly diving into, I think those are the main few. And like I enjoy Colbert's show. So Stephen Colbert is on there. would you tell yourself 14 years ago as you started YouTube? I would say don't try to make a good channel. I guess don't try to make a popular channel. Try to make it good. Try to make something that you're proud of. But there's definitely a lot of content at different points that I was making, especially in 2017 and 18 when I was like vlogging, where I was trying to be catchy. I was trying to emulate other people, and I learned a lot from that. It was a good exercise, but I wasn't going into it as the exercise of like, what could I learn from this? I was going in to say like, how could I grow my channel? How could I make a big, great YouTube channel? And so there were things that I didn't do that I wish I would have, that I think were more true to me. And there were things that I did do that I wish I wouldn't have, that I think weren't authentic. And so I would say with any content like that, make a channel that you're going to look back on in 5 years. And unless you've got some plan and the funding and the dedication to make it a money-making channel, like a full-time YouTuber channel, which is a tough grind, unless you're really going to earn some substantial revenue from this, just make stuff that you're going to log back on in 10 years and watch with your family and watch with your friends, or, that's going to live out there on the internet. When people search for you, they're going to find this stuff. Make it something that's happy, that's fun, that you're proud of, that shows what you've done, what you're capable of. And that's going to go a long way to just your general fulfillment as a creative. And I think this Q&A is part of that for me, where this is something where it is authentic. I don't think this is growing my channel or earning me any revenue with views or anything, but it's something that I'm doing authentically, and I want to put here so that I can look back on it whenever, and maybe my kids and grandkids and whatever someday can look back and hear what I had to say, and maybe they'll not use lavalier microphones because of my wisdom. 3 more. What's next for your career? I don't have a great answer for this. It's COVID, and so my career that I had in March was great. It was growing. It was exciting. I was traveling a lot, which is good and bad, but it was doing a lot of camera operation and working with agencies, and that's fun and fine. But I've been enjoying doing more of the producing side of things right now, where I'm filming less. I'm hiring people to go out and film for me because I don't have the flexibility to film for a full day without getting childcare, which is tough right now. And there's people who need it more than our family does. And so to have that safely right now is a bit of a hassle. And then it creates a cost that is difficult to justify with those rates sometimes. So I've been enjoying sort of getting to imagine the project and hire people who I think will do a good job of bringing me the pieces that I need to tell the story and to build the project, but not being there and doing it all myself. And it lets me focus on things a little differently, and prepare a little differently than I would have if I was going to film it. I think the projects that I film, I show up and I know what I'm going to do. And so I show up and I do it. As with these projects, I have to do a lot of thinking ahead of time to say, what do I want this to look like? Because I want to equip the camera operators I'm hiring to get that in a comprehensive way. And if I don't prepare them for what I'm looking for, then there's a good chance that they're not going to just bring it to me by instinct, because their instincts are going to be different than mine. So I'm getting better at producing, and I think communicating with people a little bit more. But I think the fun answer to that is I've been training with an FPV drone simulator quite a bit, and I ordered I've been using an Xbox controller to play the simulator, which has some limitations, but it's better than using the keyboard. But so I broke down and I ordered a actual drone radio. I got the DJI FPV drone radio, which shipped out late tonight and should arrive sometime, hopefully by the end of the week. And I've heard that when you start using a drone simulator with a real radio like that, it changes it. It makes it a little easier and a lot more realistic. So I'm excited to do some FPV drone stuff. Cooking tips. I think it's this simple. Microwave your Brussels sprouts and then pan fry them. Then a little bit of Parmesan cheese over that. Crispy, cooked all the way through. very good. For a long time, I were cooking Brussels sprouts where I'd fry them and then I'd steam them, and you lose all the crunchiness that you got from the fry by steaming them afterwards. So microwave them first, a little water in the bowl, steams them all the way through, cooks them all the way through, and then you're just working on that crisp on it. Got that tip. We had really good Brussels sprouts from a restaurant called Soha on Southampton, and the Brussels sprouts were so good. I called up there afterwards and asked how they did it, and they're like, "We microwave them and then deep fry them." I'm like, okay. And lastly, I liked this question. I liked putting it last because I made a YouTube series. If this was from Justin, I made a YouTube series called "What Have You Learned," where I did like 4 or 5 episodes asking different people just that question, and I would sort of give their background of who they were and how they got to where they are, and then what did they learn? Just that one simple question. And I wasn't trying to get a lot out of them, and all the videos were around 3 minutes, and I wanted it to be real simple. And I'm like, as a test first episode, I said what I had learned was learn to be wrong and to eagerly be wrong. And I still believe that, because if you're not eager to be wrong, you're never going to really grow in any meaningful way. And so approaching life with a bit more humility, I think, can go a long way to making your relationships more meaningful, more cooperative, and deeper, more productive. And it can make you a better business person and neighbor, and citizen, by just being open to that. And I think what we're seeing right now politically is a lot of people who are unwilling to admit that they're wrong, or even consider alternatives to the reality that they've constructed around themselves. And so I would say eagerly be wrong, and stay composed, was the lesson there. But I think what I've learned from COVID is the value of time. And there's a great show that we just watched the first episode of on HBO Max. It's a CNN show, but it's on HBO Max, called The Pursuit of Happiness. And it's Ravi Patel going around, and he had to do a travel show, but he wanted to do it differently. And so it's not so much about the destination as it is about an existential question that he's been pondering, and a situation. So the first one was about retirement. And so he goes to Mexico with his parents to talk about retirement and like taking them away from their friends and family. And they live in South Carolina. He lives in LA. And they found this awesome retirement community where people love it in Mexico, and it's affordable and safe and all this stuff. And so it's just like, do they stay home in South Carolina with their friends? Do they come to LA and retire where they can be closer to their grandkids? Or do they go to some other place where their money can go a lot longer and they can live this vacation life? But it just sort of put things in perspective for me and made me think a bit about what I'm going to be at that age one day where I need to make that decision for myself. And I'm in this place now where my parents and my in-laws are also in different phases, and part of you wants their attention, part of you wants their involvement, but also to respect their space and their interests and the things that they want to do and accomplish. And so getting that right is tricky, but then thinking about yourself to say, what do I want then? And what do I want now? What do I want my day-to-day to look like? And I've got this thing going right now where I'm working really, really hard for like 3 hours a day, not including the YouTube stuff, but I put it in during naps and stuff, but that's when I'm answering all my emails. That's when I'm editing, and that's when I'm turning these projects around. And it's busy, but at the end of the day, I look back and I say, yeah, I worked really hard for 3 hours today. And then I spent 5 hours just hanging out with my kid. I spent another 3 hours with my kid and my wife. And then I spent another 2 or 3 hours just hanging out with my wife before, we call it a day. And so while it's COVID and there's a lot of people I wish we could see, the silver lining for me right now has been the amount of time I've gotten to spend with my son and have that face-to-face time that not a lot of dads get, not a lot of families get. And so while there's definitely cons to what's happened with my career, not what's happened with my career, but the decisions I've made to scale things back and to be more of a full-time dad right now, it's definitely been a net positive with the time that I've been able to spend and the experiences that I've had because of it. So what I've learned is to think outside of yourself a little bit and not get caught up in the hustle, because I think there's people who put their heads down and they're like, I'm going to, work real hard to be a filmmaker, and or be a YouTuber or whatever it is. Even the non-video careers out there, the few of them that exist. But people hustle so hard that when they finally pick their head up and look around, years have passed by. They're still never going to be satisfied with how far they've gotten. And they're going to look back and say, I wish I had spent that time cherishing those moments, or at least reflecting on them throughout in a more meaningful way. And so I think it's one of those things that I wish I could say, like, I've known all along, but I'm definitely relearning it right now, as far as this is something that is going to have an impact on my life. And when I look back on the COVID years, trying to say, did I learn something? Did I come out of it in a better way than I went into it? And what can I pass on from that? And what can I take from that to apply to the rest of my life? And I think it is cherish those moments, because I don't think there'll be a day when I'm older where I look back and say, like, oh man, I wish I would have edited a little bit more. I wish I would have added a sparkle to that video and done a couple, wish I would have cleaned up those transitions. I think I would look back and say, man, I wish I had walked away from the computer and spent some time with some friends, had a phone call, had a video chat during COVID, or, gone and hung out with somebody. And so I think it was easy before, when the world was, full of options, to say, well, I can do anything, so I'm going to do everything. And now when a lot of that is impossible, to step back and say, well, what I do today isn't going to make me a Hollywood director, if that was, the goal. So instead, what can I do to make some progress toward that? But if I never make it there, how can I look back and say this wasn't a wasted day? And I think that's what I've learned. So thanks everyone for hanging out, Justin and your tuna. Yeah, when I get this FPV drone figured out, we'll go chase some animal control animals with it. That's not true. We won't do that. That's unsafe and mean. But we'll chase something. That's all. See you later. Bye.